Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of July 7th, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos present. President Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos. Campos not present. Supervisor Christensen.
Present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell.
Present.
Farrell present. Supervisor Kim.
Here.
Kim present. Supervisor Marr.
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Present.
Yee present. And Supervisor Campos. Campos present. Madam President, all members are present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
I have no communications today, Madam President.
Okay, colleagues, are there any changes to the May 19th meeting minutes or the June 2nd board meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Motioned by Supervisor Farrell, seconded by Supervisor Marr. We'll take. Can we take that without objection? Without objection, the meeting minutes will pass after public comment. Madam Clerk, can you please read the consent agenda?
Items 1 through 5 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Colleagues, does anyone want to sever any items on the consent agenda? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 1 through 5, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Aye. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 11 ayes.
These items are finally passed and approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 6 is an ordinance to amend Articles 33F and 33G of the Police Code, which contain the provisions for the Formula Retail employee rights.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item number 7, please.
Item 7 is, Madam President, would you like me to call item 8
Oh,
as
yes.
well?
Can you please call items 7 and 8 together?
Thank you. Items 7 and 8 are two resolutions that determine and declare that the public interest and necessity demand the construction, acquisition, improvement, rehabilitation, preservation, and repair of affordable housing improvements and related costs to be financed through bonded indebtedness for item 7 in an amount not to exceed $300 million and item 8, $350 million.
Okay, Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I want to thank everyone for our lively discussion over the past few weeks, and particularly that culminated at the end of our budget process in committee a few weeks ago. And with that, what I would like to do today is propose, and everyone's gotten circulated this before, this is the resolution. The ordinance is still sitting at committee for the housing bond, that we will have one going forward. However, these resolutions can get amended and passed out today. And I want to thank, again, everyone, in particular Supervisor Avalos, for his advocacy. And we'll talk more about when the budget items come forward in a few weeks. But excited to where we got to, not only within our budget process, but in particular the affordable housing element of that we're able to add, and the additional $10 million that we were able to add to the mayor's original affordable housing bond that everyone has since signed on to. So with that, I'd like to make a motion after discussing with Supervisor Avalos as well in terms of protocol. For item number 7, I'd like to make a motion to amend, as has been passed out, to raise the amount of the affordable housing bond to $310 million. And then I'll also concurrently make a motion to table item number 8.
Okay, Supervisor Farrell has made a motion to amend item number 7. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Avalos. Can we take the amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment passes unanimously. And Supervisor Avalos, before we move forward, did you want to comment?
I just want to affirm that I'll be a co-sponsor for item number 7, and I am okay with the tabling of item number 8. And I believe what we have in terms of a larger bond and money in next year's budget for increasing the amount of money for affordable housing is well in line with what I was asking for and working towards for a large amount of money for housing overall in the bond. So I'll be supportive of the new larger bond. I want to thank the mayor's office for their work to collaborate with us on this, and look forward to seeing how we do with the ballot.
Thank you. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Just quickly want to say that I am also supportive of this effort, and I'm especially proud of the fact that besides the addition to the bond, that in the budget process that we were also able to include $25 million which we hope will be made available as quickly as possible in terms of funding affordable housing moving forward. I'm grateful to the mayor, grateful to the chair of the budget committee, Supervisor Farrell, and to all of us collectively. I think this is something that we should, as a body, be very proud of, and happy to lend my name to this bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, President Breed. I'm very pleased that we're now a united board on the housing bond that's moving forward. I'm really pleased that the Mission District's sites will be looked at, and there's significant increases for the displacement, addressing the displacement within the Mission District and other communities facing evictions and displacement. I'm also appreciative of the significant increase from $250 million to over $300 million for this housing bond. So I've already added my name and want to join the chorus in helping to pass this in November. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Kim.
Since everyone is adding their name, I'm also going to be adding my name as a co-sponsor to the $310 million general obligation bond for affordable housing. It is really great to see such unity around this bond move forward this upcoming year. The last time San Francisco was able to pass a bond on affordable housing was in 1999, and we quickly spent those money on acquisition rehab in many of our single-room occupancy hotels and other rent-controlled buildings, and of course in the construction of new affordable housing, of which our residents are living in currently today. Unfortunately, the last 2 times that we moved forward with a bond, in 2002 and 2006, we were not able to cross the threshold needed. And so these dollars have been sorely needed over the last decade. I do really believe with the strong unified support of this entire Board of Supervisors and the Mayor's office, not just in supporting it, but making it our priority campaign this November, I'm really optimistic that we will be able to get our voters to pass this as a priority of our spending of our dollars. I think that there's a lot of good things in here, not just acquisition, rehab, and production of new affordable housing, but it is good to see that there is also provisions in here for middle-class home ownership opportunities, as well as site acquisition in the Mission, something that we heard from our residents on a month ago. And I'm glad to see that we were able to raise this dollar amount without raising property taxes for our residents, and I think that this is a positive piece moving forward this year.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. I also wanted to make sure that will be added to the name as a co-sponsor, as I mentioned at the Budget Committee I wanted to do. And I'm really glad that we're going to be unified in this effort. And I'm pretty sure with this unification and effort, we'll be able to convince the voters to support this bond measure, this very important housing bond measure. As you know, whether you have a home or not have a home, if you have a home, you probably have family members or relatives that probably need to find somewhere in San Francisco to live. So this goes a long way. I don't think it's going to be the end of our discussion around housing, but it's a great next step.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Farrell.
Thanks, President Breed. Colleagues, thanks everyone for co-signing on to this resolution. I just want to remind everyone that the more important one will be co-signing on to the ordinance itself when it comes forward to the full board next week. So hope we can make sure that happens as well in case it doesn't get marked as such.
Okay, there is a motion to move forward item number 7 as amended with positive recommendation and table item number 8 by Supervisor Farrell, and it has been seconded by Supervisor Avalos. Can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, item number 7 is moved forward as amended with positive recommendation, and item number 8 is tabled unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Item 9 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require all city elected officials keep public daily calendars of their meetings and events, and that calendars kept by elected officials and department heads include information about the identities of persons in attendance.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item number 10, please.
Item 10 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to establish and set forth the membership and duties of the Cannabis State Legalization Task Force to advise the Board of Supervisors, the mayor, and city departments regarding the local impacts of possible state legislation legalizing adult use of cannabis.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item number 11.
Item 11 is a resolution to authorize the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development to expend SOMA Community Stabilization Fund dollars for specific housing and infrastructure projects in the approximate amount of $2.5 million.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call items 12 and 13 together?
Item 12 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to establish the Fillmore Street Neighborhood Commercial Transit District along Fillmore Street between Bush and McAllister Streets in place of the Fillmore Street Neighborhood Commercial District. Item 13 is the ordinance to amend the planning code to establish the Divisadero Street Neighborhood Commercial Transit District along Divisadero Street between Haight and O'Farrell Streets in place of the Divisadero Street Neighborhood Commercial District. Both ordinances make conforming and other technical changes to various sections of the planning code and amend the zoning map to make changes that conform with the code amendments and affirm the planning department's determination under CEQA.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, these items came to my attention just at the last minute that they're not meeting up to our standard that we approved by the voters last year of 33% affordability. We're giving a bonus here for these sites on Divisadero and Fillmore, and yet we're not, with that bonus, we're not actually increasing the level of affordability. And I think that would be very inconsistent with city policy that we crafted for the voters last year and that the voters supported. And we also know that when we actually create housing that is not affordable, it creates a demand that's much greater than it would be without it for affordable housing. So I'd like to see if there's a way that we could continue these items for later in the agenda. We can think about how we can add some language about deepening the affordability that's here, because otherwise it would be just at 12%, and yet we'll see housing built at a very high density that doesn't give a trade-off of really being meeting our demands for affordability in San Francisco. And this just came to me at the very last minute. Otherwise, I would have had a chance to talk with Supervisor Breed, President Breed, whose district this is in. So I'd like to motion that we refer to this item later in the agenda, and I could work with Mr. Givner perhaps on a possible amendment.
And just for clarity, I'm not making any amendments to the legislation. It's been through a process through the planning department. It's gone through land use, and there are certain guidelines that restrict parcels that are of a certain particular square footage. Like, for example, the Divisadero corridor will still have to get a conditional use permit because it's going to be over 10,000 square feet in terms of its lot. This adds more units, but in terms of affordability, it also adds more units for affordability. And again, this is really not the best time to have this discussion, but I don't want to move this item to later in the agenda, and I'd like to see it move forward.
So,
and I wasn't necessarily prepared to have the discussion.
Okay. President Breed, you wouldn't support increasing the affordability of these projects so they meet our
They're two
prop
different
goal
things
from
as
last year that was approved by the voters.
And this is,
33%.
it's two different things as it relates to a neighborhood commercial transit district. This is to add some additional housing, and it will increase the number of affordable units because it still remains at the same percentage. If a lot is over the 10,000 square foot amount, it goes through a process of needing to get a conditional use permit, which helps with the negotiation around the additional affordable housing that would be requested of anyone who's developing on any of these lots.
I understand, but 12% is 21% less than 33% that was approved by the voters last year.
But
I have a motion to re-refer this item to the end of the agenda.
Okay, so Supervisor Avalos has made a motion, and there's a seconded by Supervisor Campos. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On the motion to continue this item until later in the meeting, items 12 and 13, Supervisor Yee?
No.
Yee, no. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
No.
Christensen, no. Supervisor Cohen?
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Farrell?
No.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Wiener?
No.
Wiener, no. There are 4 ayes and 7 noes, with Supervisors Yee, Breed, Christensen, Cohen, Farrell, Tang, and Wiener in the dissent.
Okay, the motion to move these items to the end of the agenda has failed. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on moving forward with items 12 and 13? Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. Typically, I would want to support legislation like this that increases density, and I do support it, but I don't support it at the 12% affordability, and I will be voting no.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I just wanted to make some comments because I sit on Land Use Committee, and we were able to have a discussion of this legislation, of these two ordinances at committee. And I actually understand the concerns that Supervisor Avalos has brought up. They were questions that I had when I initially read the planning code amendments over the weekend. I will say a couple of things. I do think that there is a question that needs to be had on this board about when we increase the number of units that can be built on certain sites, which this legislation does, about what is the benefit and the cost, and are we ensuring that there are benefits conferred to the community when we confer benefits onto the developer, as in cases like this. What made me feel comfortable supporting this ordinance at Land Use Committee were a couple of things, and I actually think that this is the time to have this discussion. This is when it's at the full board, and I appreciate that Supervisor Avalos brought this up. Were a couple of things. One, I was worried about taking away the minimum square footage for units, because I don't think micro units create more affordable housing. I think that it doesn't necessarily address some of the housing needs that we need to see here in the city, and I know that there's debate about this on this board. But two, that we were conferring a benefit by allowing more units to be built on the same size and parcel. A couple of things helped alleviate my concerns. One is that the 40% requirement for 2-bedroom units or more will be kept in place in this NCT, ensuring that it's not just 150, 300 feet studio micro units that can be built, of which developers can really profit from at really high square footage cost. But the second piece is that as we think about what it means to raise affordability, we are limited via the Housing Trust Fund in being able to do this outside of an area plan. So when we do a change to an NCT that doesn't allow us, given the current conditions of our charter, to increase affordability just by increasing this benefit. That being said, I think that Supervisor Avalos raises a good long-term question as we continue to make these types of amendments in our planning code, and that we should be really thinking long-term to make sure that we set some consistent policy on balancing benefits to developers and benefits to the community as well. So I think that we should continue to work on this. I know we're having a discussion about what the implication of the Housing Trust Fund has meant in 2012, given the current economic conditions that we're seeing, which is amazing and great currently in the city. But I will be supporting these two amendments that are moving forward today.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be supporting both pieces of legislation today. I think
the idea of creating neighborhood commercial transit districts on transit corridors is exactly the right direction in terms of housing policy in San Francisco. We did this on Upper Market Street. We did it in Glen Park. I know it's been done in other parts of the city as well. And what it basically says is that along transit corridors, which is exactly where we want to be putting more housing, we should relax density controls in terms of the number of units that people put in. And whatever the rationale for limiting number of units, which makes sense in various parts of the city, it doesn't make sense along a transit corridor where you want to have more units of housing. And in fact, having more units of housing means more units of affordable housing, because that, whether it's 12% or 33%, whatever the case may be for the default rule or for a particular project, that's going to go up. The number of affordable units will go up as the number of overall units in the project go up. I also think in terms of affordable housing, I do not think that that is the kind of conversation you have in terms of whether it should be 12% or 33% in the context of one neighborhood commercial transit district. That is a citywide, or at least an area or neighborhood-wide type of discussion in terms of affordability levels, and so that is a conversation we should be having, and frankly, that we are having. I do want to just make one last point, and I appreciate that Supervisor Kim and I have, for a number of years, have had differing perspectives on the micro-unit issue. Just by pure coincidence, this morning I was talking to someone who lives in a micro-unit. I believe it's somewhere in the 200 to 250 square foot range, south of Market, in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city, and she pays $1,100 a month. So she pays $1,100 a month for her own unit with her own kitchen, her own bathroom, which is dramatically different than the pricing that we're seeing for one bedrooms in our more expensive neighborhoods like South of Market or the Castro and so forth. And so I don't agree with the concept that micro-units are somehow not a key part of the mix. They are. And we also know that most projects have a mix of sizes ranging from small to medium to large, and that's exactly the way it should be. So this is good legislation, and I support it.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. I supported the motion to continue it towards the end of the meeting because I think it's important for us to have these kinds of conversations. I'm glad that we're actually having those discussions now. In terms of micro units, I have supported the exploration of that concept before. I do agree that different things work for different people. The concern that I have with micro units is that to the extent that they are paying $1,100 for a very small room, that does set the market for the same type of space, or at least the amount of square footage, and I can see the fact that it means that it makes more challenging to be able to afford something. It increases the prices for very small space. And the challenge with micro units is that for a lot of the folks that are struggling to be in the city, a micro unit would not be an option, whether it's a family or even a couple. But if you have kids in the mix, it's not an option. That said, I do think it's important for us to have a conversation about affordability, and I agree that what Supervisor Avalos said. I think, though, that that conversation is one that should be had citywide. In terms of my district, if this were happening in my district, I don't know that this would be the right approach for my district. But in this case, you have a district supervisor who's been involved in this process. So out of deference to the district supervisor, I will be supporting this. But I do believe that we need to have further conversations as a city in terms of what affordability levels we should have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. And just for clarity, this will not change the requirement that any of the buildings that are built with 5 or more units will be required to provide at least 40% 2 bedrooms or 30% 3 bedrooms. So they won't all be micro units, but thank you. Supervisor Christensen.
I just wanted to thank Supervisor Avalos for helping us keep our eye on the prize here. I think we're all especially sensitive to the issue of affordable housing. I know I am in my district, and I salute Supervisor Kim and Supervisor Cohen and President Breed. I know all of you have worked really hard. I think not only can this be addressed on a citywide basis, or as Supervisor Wiener says, on a neighborhood basis, but I think allowing some freedom on a case-by-case basis is also helpful, and knowing especially larger projects along these corridors can be addressed individually, and that attempt to increase the affordable housing quotient addressed, and the kind of scrutiny that this has had prior to now allows me to be supportive as well.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify my comments earlier about what we're allowed to do under Proposition C, the Housing Trust Fund. I spoke a little bit too quickly when I said that there are some limitations in terms of when we can increase affordability, that we're somewhat limited to special area plans and development agreements and other such things. Actually, under Prop C as well, if you increase significantly development potential, there is a possibility that you can break this cap on increasing affordable housing. What I will say is this: I think this is an important conversation to have, and I'm really glad that Supervisor Avalos raised it. I think that my request to the Planning Department and the Commission is that as we do more legislation and amendments to the Planning Code that increase our density and therefore the development potential of multiple sites throughout the city, that they really consider the benefit that is conferred to developers and ensure that we are able to capture some of that benefit back to the community in upcoming amendments to the Planning Code. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on items 12 and 13?
Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
No.
Avalos, no. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 10 ayes, 1 no, with Supervisor Avalos in the dissent.
These ordinances are passed on the first reading. Madam Clerk, we're going to skip over to our 2:30 special commendations, and Supervisor Eric Marr has a commendation today.
Thank you. Colleagues, last week on Wednesday, I joined with, I know, Supervisor Wiener, Supervisor Tang, and others in the celebration by disabled people's organizations of the 25th anniversary of the ADA in San Francisco. I wanted to acknowledge that we're going to be honoring the Mayor's Office on Disability. Carla Johnson is here, and also the Community Alliance of Disability Advocates, CADA. So 25 years ago, federally, we passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, but 38 years ago, before, there was a major action in San Francisco, but also in other federal buildings around this country. 38 years ago, on April 1977, disability rights activists and leaders took over federal buildings. The San Francisco takeover was the month-long one, the longest takeover of a federal building in this country. Very good statements from a lot of the leadership in celebrating the ADA's 25th anniversary, but I think very subtle, radical messages that it doesn't stop here, and also an exhibit that was displayed in the Northlight Court called Patient No More, which isn't just about history, but it's also about the current struggle today. So disability rights are civil rights. We often overlook it in many ways, but disability advocates and the organizations that are represented here, I think, raise our awareness every day. The federal ADA is one of America's most comprehensive pieces of civil rights legislation. It prohibits discrimination and guarantees people with disabilities the same opportunities as everyone else, but it's also about equity and social justice as well. Like other civil rights laws, it's not given to people benevolently by politicians, but it's won through struggle and unity of organizations and people fighting for their rights. Advocates in the Bay Area led the way in April of 1977 with the occupation, the 504 occupation as it was called, and many of the leaders were at the celebration on Wednesday. It's been 25 years since we passed the ADA, and San Francisco's made significant accomplishments in the built environment, as we could see around us, and in City Hall and on the streets. However, we still have much more to go, according to disability activists and organizers, such as affordable and accessible housing, funding for programs for people with disabilities and seniors, educational opportunities, meaningful employment, which there's been some victories that a number of the leaders have won in hiring at the city level and civil service jobs, people with disabilities who are quite capable and really are willing to serve the city in many ways more than they have been. I think that the themes of It Doesn't Stop Here and Patient No More are really fitting for our celebration in San Francisco. I want to thank Carla Johnson and her staff, along with the many disabled people's organizations, for constantly raising awareness, educating us. As an ally of the disability rights movement, I wanted to say I learn from you every day. It's my pleasure to acknowledge in the chambers Jessica Lehman, the Executive Director of Senior and Disability Action, Bill Hirsch, the Director of AIDS Legal Referral Panel, Fiona Hines, the System Change Coordinator and Community Organizer of the Independent Living Resource Center, who are leading in September a major Pride event and a statewide conference here in San Francisco, Marie Jobling, the Director of the Community Living Campaign, Kelly Dearman, the Director of the IHSS Public Authority, and Mark Melanson of Community Service of Toolworks. And at this moment, I just wanted to say more information is all over the place. Patient No More is the exhibit that was displayed. The Ed Roberts campus in Berkeley gets it for the next couple of months, and then San Francisco State in the fall has it. But it really raises awareness of direct action, organizing, and making laws, but also implementing and enforcing laws 38 years ago. Also, ADA25BayArea.org is where you can find great information of all these organizations that I think we should be in solidarity with and to support. At this moment, I'll just ask if Carla Johnson of the Mayor's Office of Disability and others would like to make a few comments. Carla?
Thank you so much, President Breed, Supervisors, and Supervisor Marr for that introduction. I almost feel like I don't have anything to say at this point because you've done such a beautiful job of capturing how advocacy really leads to action. But one of the reasons why we're here today really is to introduce you to our community advocates from CADA, or CADA, as we like to call it. But also we're here today to thank you, members of the board, for all of the work that you've done, especially around issues like pedestrian safety, affordable and accessible publicly funded housing, some of the issues that we have around elevator access to our single-room occupancy hotels, effective communication at our community events, making sure that people who use American Sign Language are able to fully participate in those community events, website accessibility, and things like preserving and enhancing our community and cultural resources like the African American Cultural Center and the Bayview Opera House project, which is currently under renovation. And as Supervisor Marr has said, although we have much to thank for the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we really feel that it doesn't stop here. We have so much more work to do. You were speaking earlier today about the affordable housing issue. That matter is huge for those of us in the senior and disability community because really it's only the newly constructed affordable housing that's truly accessible to people with disabilities. And that's one of our lifelines that actually allows us to stay in this beautiful city, the city where we are supported by so many of the different critical key elements, whether that is in-home supportive services or mental health services to help our disabled vets remain in their housing. So in order to continue living independently in San Francisco, we want to continue building and maintaining our accessible infrastructure such as streets, sidewalks, and public transportation. And we need accessible businesses, too. And I want to thank Supervisor Tang for the legislation that she plans to introduce today that will really help move that discussion forward for accessible businesses. And we need housing, and we need jobs. And as you mentioned, Supervisor Marr, meaningful jobs, well-paying jobs, jobs that actually allow us to afford to live into this city and also allow us to cut those ties to government assistance. So thank you, supervisors, for the commendations today. I'd like to introduce you just very briefly by face so that you can see our Community Alliance of Disability Advocates. We have Marie Jobling here from Community Living Campaign. Raise your hand, Marie. We have Jessica Lehman from Senior and Disability Action. Fiona Hines from Independent Living Resource Services, San Francisco. Kelly Dearman from In-Home Supportive Services, Public Authority. Bill Hirsch from AIDS Legal Referral Panel, and Mark Mellinson from Toolworks. I guarantee you'll be seeing a lot more of us because that's our job. Our job is to really push the envelope and to engage the conversation with you so that we can all make San Francisco the best city to live in for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson and the Coalition for all of your hard work to serve the disabled and community. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, we're going to return to our regular agenda and go to item number 14.
Item 14 is an ordinance to amend the Planning Code, Section 138.1, to authorize the Rincon Hill Streetscape Master Plan and to make the appropriate CEQA findings.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I just wanted to recognize the Planning Department for their work on the streetscape plan that is coming before us today. The Rincon Hill Area Plan was first adopted 10 years ago in 2005. It was the first major area plan adopted by the Planning Department since the 1990s Downtown and South of Market Plan. In response to the changing economy and need to build more housing, Rincon Hill was zoned from a former industrial area to a mixed-use residential area. Streetscape and traffic changes are, and of course, continue to be an integral part of this planning process. This area, while rezoned residential, is at the base of the Bay Bridge, with surrounding streets often serving as regional arteries and traffic ways. Pedestrian safety and traffic in the area continue to be an important priority and issue for many of our residents as we grow the residential population in this new residential neighborhood. We also have seen an increase in commuter traffic from the city's growing number of businesses and jobs over the last couple of years. Our residents have been asking for more Vision Zero improvements to ensure that as seniors with families and kids, they can continue to feel safe walking and living in this neighborhood. And the Streetscape Master Plan that is coming for us today includes components of widening of sidewalks of areas that used to be manufacturing corridors, living streets on Spear, Main, and Beale Street, a focus on Harrison Street for traffic calming and street widening, and of course one boulevard that we have long talked about through the Western Soma Plan, now the Central Soma Area Plan, Transit Center District Plan, and the Rincon Hill Plan is Folsom Street as a neighborhood boulevard corridor, potentially two-waying the street and making it really the small business neighborhood corridor that connects the South Market from the water all the way to the Mission. We also are working to improve pedestrian conditions as well as increase small parklets and parks and open space to make this a healthy and livable community. I want to thank our residents who are living in this neighborhood as it changes and becomes a more complete neighborhood, and for their input and feedback over this process over the last couple of years. And colleagues, I ask for your support for the master plan that is before us today.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, for item number 14, can you please call the roll?
On item 14, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 15?
Item 15 is an ordinance to amend the subsection of the general plan known as the Rincon Hill Area Plan and to incorporate into the Rincon Hill Streetscape Master Plan and to make other technical amendments and appropriate findings under CEQA.
Supervisor Cohen? Okay. Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you please call items 16, 17, and 18 together?
Items 16, 17, and 18 are three resolutions to authorize the mayor to cast assessment ballots in the affirmative on behalf of the city where parcels would be subject to assessment in the proposed property business-based improvement district to be named. For item 16, city-owned parcels in the Dog Patch and Northwest Potrero Hill Green Benefit District. For item 17, 8 parcels of real property in the Yerba Buena Community Benefit District. And item 18, 1 parcel of real property in the Greater Rincon Hill Community Benefit District.
Colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, these resolutions are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 19?
Item 19 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to establish the last 10 days of January each year as Restaurant Week, and to amend the health code to eliminate the Department of Public Health's Restaurant Appreciation Month.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, can you call item number 20?
Item 20 is a motion to reappoint Supervisor Jane Kim, term ending June 30th, 2017, to the Association of Bay Area Governments Executive Board.
Colleagues, is there a motion to excuse Supervisor Kim? Motioned by Supervisor Yee, seconded by Supervisor Cohen. Without objection, Supervisor Kim is excused. Madam Clerk, on item 20, can you please call the roll?
On item 20, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Marr. Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 10 ayes.
This motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 21?
Item 21 is a motion to reappoint Supervisor Eric Marr, term ending June 30th, 2017, to the Association of Bay Area Governments Executive Board.
Colleagues, is there a motion to excuse Supervisor Marr? Motioned by Supervisor Yee, seconded by Supervisor Campos. Without objection, Supervisor Marr is excused. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 21, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 10 ayes.
This motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please call item number 22?
Item 22 is a motion to approve the mayor's reappointment of Audrey Josephs to the Entertainment Commission, term ending July 1st, 2019.
Roll call vote.
On item 22, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we move forward on the voting, I missed Supervisor Wiener's name on the roster.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to speak in strong support of Audrey Joseph's reappointment to the Entertainment Commission. I in my office, we do an enormous amount of work around late night and entertainment policy, as well as work in the district around various events and street parties and so forth. And for decades, Audrey Joseph has just been an amazing leader on these issues, and she's terrific. And I'm just glad that she is interested in serving an additional term, and she has my strong support.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, President Breed. I just want to echo the comments from Supervisor Wiener and again say that I'm grateful that Commissioner Joseph has agreed to continue to serve the city in this capacity. She has been doing this work for so many years, and it's great that notwithstanding all the energy that goes into this work, that she still wants to continue to do it. So I'm very grateful and very proud to support her reappointment and thank the mayor for moving this name forward once again.
Thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 22, Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you call item number 23, please?
On item 23, item 23 is a motion to appoint Theodora Marie Caminong, term ending July 1st, 2019, to the Entertainment Commission.
Okay. Can we take this item? Same house, same call? Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Okay, Madam Clerk, can we please go to roll call for introductions?
Supervisor Yee is first up to introduce new business.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There's a few items I'd like to introduce today, as soon as I can find them. So, the first item is a request for the development of a white paper and a set of design guidelines on family-friendly housing in San Francisco. Today I am introducing this resolution to request that the Planning Department to develop this white paper and a set of design guidelines for family-friendly housing in San Francisco. Over the past several months, I have been meeting with Planning Director John Ram and his staff about this proposal. We have also engaged in initial discussions with housing developers about this issue. It's a well-known fact that we need to do more to retain families living in San Francisco and to attract new families here. We have been known as one of the major cities with the lowest child population, and I hope we can reverse that. One of the many factors that families cite as an issue is housing. Not just the cost, but what constitutes family-friendly housing. Many people assume that family-friendly housing just means having more bedrooms, but that is really not the only factor. As we all know, we have plenty of 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos that are not family-friendly. Family-friendly housing is also factors in access to open space, playgrounds, walkability, dedicated childcare space, storage, elevators for strollers and groceries, and the list goes on. The Planning Department has made great strides in helping to develop a version of the family for families in San Francisco. In the 2015 housing element, there is a recommendation to create a unified definition of what family housing really is. I hope that we can take this next step by creating a set of guidelines with the input of a working group that includes a diverse group of developers, families, and housing experts to help shape future development in this city. This resolution asks the Planning Department to create a white paper to define family-friendly housing and to make recommendations on how we can encourage more developments with these elements in mind. Secondly, it requests that the development of the family-friendly design guidelines to shape the vision of the San Francisco future housing developments that will be family-centric. I am very eager to see that what comes out of this process and hope that you will support this resolution. The second item is to ask the Budget and Legislative Analysts Services to provide an audit on all senior services in San Francisco, broken down into districts. The reason why I wanted to do this is, you know, we've had several discussions around the issues of that surrounds our seniors, and it is really even a faster growing population than our children population. And yet, I don't know, our services are really keeping pace with that population. And also, because In the past, much of our senior services have been concentrated in certain neighborhoods. I believe, and I will have to get this audit done to see whether that's a fact or not, and whether we need to move services around to serve, all the seniors throughout the city. So the third item I have is to close this meeting in memoriam request for Percy Chu. He is one of my heroes from my childhood days, and he was born in 1927 and just passed away July 4th. He actually was entered his real job his first job as a postal worker, but in July of 1952, he actually started working part-time for Reckin Park. Anybody growing up in San Francisco during the period when he was actually working there that played any high level of basketball would know who he is, because he was really the coach for almost everybody that probably made it into any high school team or college team. And so for 40 years, that's what he did, and that was really his passion. Not only did I have the opportunity to have him as just a coach for teenage teams, but later on, he also coached the adult team, which was called the Saints, that actually went to many, many national tournaments and also international travel, including 2 trips to China. So he will be missed, and he is survived by his wife Jean and his children Stacy, Dana, and Derek, and 6 grandchildren. So if in lieu of flowers, his family would like you to make donations to St. Mary's Chinese Day School. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I have an introduction of a hearing request to look at the efficacy and level of coordination between different departments, such as the Department of Building Inspection, Department of Public Works, the City Attorney Code Enforcement, District Attorney and Police Department, looking at blighted properties in District 11, in particular residential commercial properties where we see a lot of illegal activity that is going on, whether it is potential cooking or gambling, which is very common along many parts of the Mission Street corridor in the Excelsior District. It has been a problem that's gotten worse over the most recent couple of years as we're seeing economic activity increase in San Francisco, legal economic activity, a lot of illegal economic activity is happening in District 11, and we really need to get a handle on it. So this hearing is really about to assess the level of coordination and efficacy of departments and to figure out ways that they can work more closely together to achieve a better effect to shut down illegal gambling sites that are going on or illegal parties that are going on that are actually contributors to huge public safety problems along Mission Street to other blighted properties in the district. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk and colleagues. I just want to make a very quick comment about something very tragic that I know has been the focus of attention in San Francisco and actually throughout the country, and that is the tragic death of Catherine Steinle. And let me say that I don't know that anyone cannot but feel pain and a lot of sympathy for this family. For anyone to lose a loved one is a challenging thing, and it's been very painful for me to think about something like that happening to anyone. And it's very, very sad and very tragic, and I know that that families and the thoughts and prayers of so many of us. I think it's important as we move forward with this discussion to also provide some context and some balance to the discussion that has ensued. There is a reason why this Board of Supervisors unanimously passed and the mayor signed with the support of law enforcement, our sanctuary policy. And I think that what gets lost in the hysteria and the coverage that has been provided is the fact that at the end of the day, sanctuary policies are about public safety. They are about making cities like San Francisco a safer place. Ultimately, sanctuary policies are about letting the undocumented people who live in a city like San Francisco, and they're part of every neighborhood, have the ability and the trust to come forward when they are the victims of a crime or when they are witnesses of a crime. The only reason that they're able to come forward in a place like San Francisco is because they have trust that law enforcement is not going to focus on the enforcement of immigration laws. And there are examples of how many of cases where undocumented people, by coming forward, have increased the safety of their communities. When the discussion was happening in Los Angeles, then Chief Bratton talked about a case involving a number of homicides that had occurred in Los Angeles, and it took an undocumented man to come forward and say, "This is what I saw," to eventually catch the person. And by coming forward, that individual made that community safer. And that happens every day. And I think that as we discuss this tragic incident, that it's important to have a thoughtful and balanced discussion, and that we also do not let the act and the actions of one individual define an entire community. It's a very painful experience for anyone, but I think that it would be a mistake to have one incident define us and to respond to one incident with overreaction that can actually make things even worse and make a community less safe. I know that for many, they have tried to make San Francisco a political football, but I personally think that it is a disservice to this family and to the issue to try to score political points on this very sensitive and important matter. Ultimately, all of us care about public safety. That's why our law enforcement here in San Francisco, our chief of police, our district attorney, our sheriff have supported our sanctuary policy. That's why chief of police after chief of police throughout this country has come out to support sanctuary policy. It is about public safety. And I think that it's important that we do service to this very complicated issue by making sure that we have a thoughtful and balanced discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I submit.
Cohen will submit. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, I have one item today for introduction. Over the past few years, I've continued to hear from constituents, both inside and outside of District 2, about their wishes to be better notified about significant decisions or projects that impact their neighborhoods. Whether they want to know more about a project or a development that we often debate about here inside of City Hall down the block, or whether their muni stop is being moved, there are just a few examples of decisions that we make inside of City Hall that have significant impacts on the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And currently, if residents want information regarding specific decisions or projects, they have to request that information generally from the respective city departments responsible for these decisions or projects. Often we have noticing requirements with planning and many other departments, but it certainly does not cover all of the things that impact quality of life in our neighborhoods. In the technology capital of the world here in San Francisco now, I do believe our city residents should have advanced access to significant decisions and projects that are impacting their neighborhoods. That's why today I'm introducing the Neighborhood Notification Act, which will mandate that 311 create the city's first digitized central notification system, which will be a one-stop shop online for any city resident who wants to be better informed about their neighborhood. With the creation of our neighborhood notification system, we'll bring access to San Francisco's most important decisions in our neighborhoods and projects into this century. We will also save significant resources over time by allowing residents to be notified through electronic means and by allowing them to opt out of receiving traditional standard mail notices. The centralized notification system will be in addition to, rather than in place of, other city official noticing requirements to ensure that city residents who do not have access to email or the internet still receive city notices in person or through standard mail. It will be created and maintained by 311. The centralized notification system will cover significant projects and permitting decisions in the areas of construction and infrastructure repair work, public health and safety services and facilities, the environment, and transportation. It also will be created in 2 phases. The first phase of the system will be the creation of a website where members of the public will be able to find information on city projects and permitting decisions in each supervisorial district. The target date for creation of the website is 6 months from the adoption of this ordinance. And the second phase of the system will be the creation of a system where the city sends, by email or other electronic means on a periodic basis, information regarding significant projects and permitting decisions from the website to members of the public to proactively sign up for the service. The target date for creation of this centralized notification service is 12 months from the date of the ordinance passing. The legislation also requires that city departments work cooperatively with 311 to provide the requested information and needed data formats on a regular schedule so we're able to update the system over time. And I do want to thank all of the city departments who have worked together with my office over the past 6 to 9 months, really at this point, to work on this legislation, to talk about what type of data that they're going to be required to bring forward, what changes they're going to need to make to their own internal practices, and all, at the end of the day, getting on board with this process. More and more here in San Francisco, residents are demanding that government services and notices become available to them through modern means so they can access them more on their own time and from the comfort of their own home. With the passage of this legislation and the creation of our neighborhood notification system, we'll knock down silos that currently exist between departments and make our city government more efficient and, most importantly, more readily accessible to the public. Again, we spent a number of months negotiating and discussing this with many city departments, so we're able to earn their buy-in, which I do believe in the long term is going to be critical to the reliability and sustainability of the system. Again, I want to thank all of our city departments who have worked actively with my office on this, in particular Nancy Alfaro at 311 for all of her hard work, our Deputy City Administrator Jennifer Johnson, as well as Naomi Kelly, my staff in particular Jess Montejano, and all the others that have gone into making this introduction today. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. Since introducing the Housing Balance Ordinance last April of 2014, of which we have discussed much over the last month in this board, challenging the city to meet a housing goal of building or acquiring at least 30% affordable housing in our development pipeline, and the preceding discussions and negotiations which occurred, the outcome of which was memorialized in Proposition K passed by voters this last November, asking the city to achieve 33% affordable housing and 50% affordable middle-class housing. Our office has been following up with legislation that was memorialized in Proposition K. One of the outcomes of this policy discussion was the passage of a housing balance count, amending the planning code and requiring the planning department to actually monitor and report on the housing balance between new market rate housing and new affordable housing production. In order to achieve our goals, the city should collect data on what we are building and how well, as well as how much housing we are losing. This ordinance was passed unanimously by this board in April 2015. Through the hard work of the Information Analysis Group, and in particular Teresa Ojeda, our office has received the first ever housing balance count report this week, counting new affordable and market rate production from 2004 to 2015, as well as loss of rent-controlled units via Ellis Act evictions, condo conversion, and other. This data was broken down by district as well as citywide. Today, I'm introducing a hearing request that the Planning Department formally present these findings to a board committee. And though we will have a full hearing later this month, I think it's important to share some of the highlights and takeaway of the report that we got to read this week. First, the citywide housing balance of actual built affordable housing over the last 10 years was 18%. Some of our frontline neighborhoods facing gentrification and displacement pressures fared poorly or modestly at best. The Mission has built 3% affordable housing. Chinatown and the downtown has built 6% affordable housing. The Castro, 12%. The South of Market, 23%. One of the main factors that was seen in the report in poor housing balances, or in the case of 5 supervisorial districts that actually had a negative housing balance account over the last 10 years, is the large number of housing units that are being lost because they are taken out of rent control. In one example, District 4 reported a loss of affordable rent-controlled units at 867%. No-fault evictions and resulting loss of rent control housing has been significant in all supervisorial districts across the city. District 8, the Castro Upper Market, had the most evictions, 844 units lost over the last 10 years. District 9, 688 evictions. District 6, which includes the South of Market and the Tenderloin, 641 evictions. And in District 5, Western Addition and Haight, 562 evictions. The data demonstrates a need to increase affordable housing production dramatically with immediate actions if we plan to build the minimum of 33% affordable housing over the coming years. That means securing more sites for affordable housing and funding for acquisition and development. Fortunately, measures addressing both of these needs are on the ballot for November 2015, both the Affordable Housing Bond measure of $310 million and the surplus public lands measure that our office has introduced with the support of Supervisor Avalos, Campos, and Mar. The data also shows that the eviction crisis and the resulting loss of rent-controlled units is a tremendous handicap to the city in meeting its affordable housing production goals. Every supervisorial district across the city had hundreds of households displaced over the past 10 years, and in some cases, the rate of the loss of housing exceeded the amount of affordable housing that was produced in the same period. This analysis also demonstrates a clear need for both more tools to increase affordable housing protection, but also protect our existing housing stock and our residents from displacement. 5 measures are on the queue to do that, to do that very thing. One, as I mentioned, our surplus public lands ballot measure, which will ensure that affordable housing is the priority use for publicly owned sites put up for disposition by agencies for our own development or for sale. 2, the tenant protection legislation, which will strengthen protections for tenants facing unscrupulous and opportunistic eviction threats. 3rd, our Housing Stabilization Trust Ordinance to establish a comprehensive housing acquisition and rehab program following the mandate of Proposition K that focused particularly on neighborhoods with high rates of eviction. The Affordable Housing Bond measure, which will provide additional funding for low and moderate income housing, 3 times of which this was put forward for the voters back in, 1996, not 1999, which was then at $100 million. So we have many measures before us, but I think that this report will really give us some pause in terms of what more this board and city needs to do in order to ensure that we are hitting our goals. I look forward to the discussion and this hearing at board committee this month. Second, I am also introducing interim controls for the Trans-Bay Sorry, I'm pulling up my notes. Madam Clerk, if I could be re-referred for my next item. Thank you.
Absolutely, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Mar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have several items. The first, I'm calling for an important hearing regarding public health in the city. It's come to my attention that new fast food chain restaurants and other chains and big box stores such as Starbucks, Bed Bath & Beyond, Taco Bell are now requesting liquor licenses to sell alcohol in San Francisco. I think it's unprecedented that we're seeing this trend, and other cities are as well. And I'm introducing a hearing to examine how granting new liquor licenses to non-traditional alcohol retailers will affect young people, our communities, public safety, and the small business community around us. I wanted to thank Supervisors Yee and Cohen for co-sponsoring with me. They share, I think, some of the same concerns I have. Our Community Public Health Coalition also shares many concerns that there might be a floodgate, the opening of a floodgate of applications from fast food chains, coffee retailers, and big box stores soon. Because many of these retailers' business models are predicated on fast food and high customer volumes, I'm especially concerned that we might see an increase in underage drinkers or underage alcohol drinking, and the city may need to monitor more closely what people do after taking alcohol out of stores after they've been purchased. Beyond questions of compatibility, we should also ask if these new requests for licenses are going to be sought in areas that are already plagued with an oversaturation of takeout alcohol outlets. Large companies and corporations like those that are requesting these alcohol permits have already implemented this strategy in cities across the nation. Starbucks is now, for example, selling alcohol in Washington, D.C., Chicago, Atlanta, Portland, and Seattle. I feel strongly that communities in San Francisco may have some strong concerns about this trend. Starbucks is already targeting our kids with cotton candy frappuccinos, and it makes the situation only worse to target alcohol sales to our next generation as well. Taco Bell, for example, has a pending liquor license to sell slushy malt liquor beverages right by AT&T Park, and alcohol in a fast food environment may encourage public alcohol consumption in our communities. That's a concern of mine. And also, one community activist who's also a law enforcement activist questioned from Bed Bath & Beyond's permit request, do we really need to see a Bed Bath & Booze chain continue in San Francisco? And worst of all, I'm concerned about the potential harm to our small local businesses. It may tip the balance towards large chains in a very confined marketplace, and corporate profit margins will rise at the expense of small, independent local chains, local restaurants, cafes, and boutique stores, small businesses that define the unique character of San Francisco. So I think this hearing is important in bringing together small business leaders, public health experts, law enforcement, and communities to address the issue. Also, I wanted to thank co-sponsors President Breed and Supervisor Avalos for working with my office and a committee for many months now, actually over a year now, introducing a resolution addressing formula retailer chain store subsidiaries. And it's a simple and elegant solution to address the problem of our neighborhoods, that our neighborhoods face when a particular chain store that owns subsidiaries are allowed to enter commercial corridors without neighborhood input. I think people might remember 2 years ago, Jack Spade tried to go into Valencia Street. Jack Spade, of course, is owned by a larger subsidiary called Fifth and Pacific, formerly known as Liz Claiborne, and there was a vigorous community debate, and eventually the store did not open. So the hard work of this legislation was formulated through a series of meetings of stakeholders that included neighborhood residents, small businesses, small business owners, representatives of the Chamber of Commerce, as well as great work of the planning staff and Nick Pagalatos from my office that did a lot of the heavy lifting on this. Our new ordinance will change the definition of what constitutes a formula retail or a chain business to include businesses where all three of the following factors are present. One, 50% or more of the stock, shares, or any similar ownership interest of such establishment is owned by an existing formula retail use or a subsidiary, affiliate, or parent of an existing formula retail use. Two, there are three or more other retail sales establishments already in operation anywhere in the world. And three, the retail establishment maintains two or more of the following features: a standardized array of merchandise, a standardized facade, a standardized decor or color scheme, uniform apparel, standardized signage, a trademark, or a service mark. A special thanks to Supervisor Breed and Connor Johnson from her office, who originally proposed many of the concepts which have now evolved into the input of many of the stakeholders in our task force. So, colleagues, I look forward to your support. And lastly, on Wednesday, tomorrow from 4 to 6, join me in my office, room 284. Everyone is welcome. We're celebrating creativity and art from a number of seniors from the Richmond District, the Richmond Senior Center art class. It will be up in my office for another few weeks, but the art reception and exhibit is from 4 to 6. Nearly 25 senior and disabled artists are personally represented by pieces they chose themselves. The event is co-hosted by the Richmond Senior Center along with their director and the great senior leader Linda Murley, and art instructor Walden Wong, who's also an acclaimed comic book artist. And as a comic book fan, I appreciate what he does in comic books, but then what he's done to help seniors find their creative side and to create is really amazing. So thanks to Walden Wong, the art instructor. We'll have light refreshments, really, really creative and inspiring seniors and fabulous art. We'll also be celebrating our recent senior citywide and District 1 budget wins with a budget package. And thanks again to my colleagues on the Budget Committee, but especially our chair, Mark Farrell, that for senior funding, we won Vision Zero programs to protect and to ensure safer streets for seniors, increased staffing for aging and disability resource centers, also for isolated and hungry seniors and people with disabilities, much more home-delivered meals, groceries, and staffing for disabled employment outreach and recruitment. In District 1, the Richmond Senior Center is especially appreciative that we're supporting their intergenerational food delivery and programs for seniors, and a village model in the Richmond District, and also Safe Streets for Seniors programming in the Richmond District as well, among a lot of other things. So hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday, and the rest I'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you, colleagues. July 26th marks an historic day here. It is the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I'm very glad that Supervisor Marr had taken the opportunity earlier to honor many of our advocates in the community as well as our Mayor's Office on Disability. So I can think of no better time than to introduce legislation that our office has been working on for actually the past 2 years to create a first-of-its-kind citywide program to address accessibility issues in our places of public accommodation. San Francisco has always held a strong interest in ensuring that all places of public accommodation in our city are welcoming to all and in full compliance with state and federal disability access laws. Through my years working at the Board of Supervisors, I've met many small businesses, owners, and disability rights advocates who have wanted to take a more proactive approach on this issue and to create a citywide program. Thus, the legislation I'm introducing at today's meeting furthers these objectives by 1, requiring that the owner of a building with a place of public accommodation has the building inspected for compliance with disability access requirements. Secondly, we're mandating that either the building have a primary entry and accessible route into the building that is usable by persons with disabilities, or the building owner can obtain a finding from the city that compliance is technically infeasible or is an unreasonable hardship. And lastly, encouraging voluntary corrections to other non-complying accessibility elements in the building. We are modeling this program after the successful Soft Story retrofit program here in San Francisco. Places of public accommodation will be designated into 4 categories, each of which will have a specific compliance schedule ranging from 12 to 30 months. The legislation will also empower the Access Appeals Commission to make determinations of equivalent facilitation, technical infeasibility, extensions of time, and other matters. And this formal documentation is incredibly important, as many property owners and business owners have shared with us that they have attempted to make accessibility improvements, but often have difficulties given the historic nature of their building or the surrounding topography. And finally, we will require the Department of Building Inspection to create a disability access compliance unit to enforce these provisions and consult and coordinate with relevant city agencies to assist owners in compliance. Although our city welcomes people from all walks of life, and although our business community have made efforts to understand the ADA, it is unfortunate that we have seen many small businesses in San Francisco and throughout the state of California hit with threatening drive-by lawsuits, often filed by serial litigants. And in several cases, businesses hit with lawsuits have actually had to close entirely, or they settled before the compliance was even achieved. So thus, our legislation not only seeks to encourage businesses to take steps to meet accessibility needs, but it is also designed to educate our business community about how they can best serve everyone. So we really took our time on this legislation to make sure that it was feasible for property owners and business owners. And now, after 2+ years of hard work, I'm very proud of the team that made this happen. So I would like to take this opportunity to first thank Deanna Keyson from my office, who worked on this legislation with me. The many city agencies, stakeholders, and community members, such as Judy Boyajian from our city attorney's office, Richard Halloran from DBI, Carla Johnson from Mayor's Office on Disability, Regina Dickendrizi from the Office of Small Business, and Arnie Lerner from the Access Appeals Commission. And I look forward to having our full support on this legislation.
And also hope that other cities and the rest of our country will take note of this and potentially put something similar in place as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Weiner.
Submit.
Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for re-referring to me. Second, I am introducing interim sign controls for the Trans Bay Redevelopment Area Plan. Earlier this year, the board passed an update to our citywide sign controls. During this process, residents in our Trans Bay Area Plan raised concerns about business signs, often across the windows of apartments in the new Trans Bay District Center area, a neighborhood which is mixed use and includes both businesses and residential buildings, often right next door to each other. Our office has been working with residents, planning staff, OCII, to develop sign controls that recognize this area as an emerging residential district that may be impacted by signage that can generally disrupt sleep and the visual enjoyment of the area. The Transit Center District Plan also contemplates a new major rooftop as well as other open space at the heart of the neighborhood. And while we examine various interests of the neighborhood and study the best controls of this issue, I am introducing interim controls to restrict new signs within the Trans Bay District Center Area Plan. The controls include restrictions of commercial signs around planned parks, including the rooftop park, which will include an amphitheater, garden, open grass area, children's play space, and a cafe, the Trans Bay Park, and the under-ramp parks. Signs over 50 feet will not be allowed within 200 feet of parks, and in areas outside of the immediate view of parks, signs shall only be direct illumination and be turned off from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. for the enjoyment and rest of our residents during these nighttime hours. These controls do mirror the city's existing controls for general advertising signs and will be in place for 18 months while we study the issue and draft permanent controls for a neighborhood that is mixed again, that is trying to build a balance between our businesses and our residents and takes into account the needs that they'd like to see in this neighborhood. And Madam Clerk, the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Madam President, seeing no other names on the roster, that concludes the roll call for the introduction of new business.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can you please read public comment?
At this time, the public may comment generally for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, to include the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 26 through 29. Please note that public comment is not allowed on items that have already been subject to public comment at a board committee. And pursuant to the board's rules, please direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors and nor to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify, and if you would like to display a document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such and state such to SFG TV and remove the document when you would like the screen to return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you. First speaker, please.
My name is Daniel Pais. This city needs leaders that are more interested in the needs of the people, instead of kowtowing, pandering, and brown-nosing tech moguls, developers, the Police Officers Association, and Rose Pack. The sound of silence concerning the racist and homophobic emails and texts the police were caught in is deafening. This is particularly troublesome concerning the supervisor that holds Harvey Milk's old seat, Scott Weiner. He hasn't said or done anything concerning the issue or on reforming the SFPD. I guess it's more important to get the police union's future endorsements than to protect the public from brutal, racist, homophobic, violent cops. Always with developers, the techies, and the POA, Scott Weiner is this week's...
Sir, I have just paused your time. You may not address an individual supervisor.
I'm not addressing the individual.
Please direct your remarks to the board as a whole. I will resume your time.
I'm talking to the board as a whole. Is the recipient of this week's Kowtow Pander and Brown Nose Award. Let's face it, Scott Weiner is no Harvey Milk or Tom Amiano. He's not even a Mark Leno.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
You hear the Bill of Rights?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for allowing a public comment. My name is Emily Goodwin, and I am with Y Green Energy Fund. We're a nation's leading PACE provider, which is Property Assessed Clean Energy, but I don't think I need to spell out the acronym to you folks here today. You've been a leader in the energy finance space for many, many years, and an example not only statewide but throughout the country about how to scale renewable energy, water, and energy conservation projects for residential and commercial customers. I am here as a matter to introduce myself, our company. We are expanding throughout the state of California. We're the only PACE company that operates in several states throughout the country, and we're very excited about the expansion here in San Francisco, working with the Department of the Environment and the Environment Commission. And so I look forward to future discussions with the Finance Committee, with the Environment Commission, and as well bringing back this item to you all, hopefully for a supportive vote sometime in the near future. We are expanding, as I said, throughout the state of California, but more importantly for the summer building season, we are making headway in surrounding communities in San Mateo, Alameda, San Jose, Marin County, and we really try to build that contiguous contractor base to make projects scale and really get the most impacts out of PACE Finance. So again, this is just an introduction, and thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Jesse Waters with the O'Reilly Factor at Fox News Channel. I'd like to address your dangerous sanctuary city policies. I'd like to show you a picture here. This is Kate Steinle. She was murdered by an illegal alien who had been deported 5 times and over 6 felony convictions. But for some reason, the city of San Francisco let this guy out, even though the feds said, hold him. I'm here to find out why you guys did that. Because this sanctuary city policy that you guys still support is costing lives. How many more lives is it going to take for you guys to readdress this policy? I'm flabbergasted. I didn't hear a lot of regret today. You guys have been ignoring the issue. You guys have been all running and hiding. You know what Kate said? Her last words? Look at the picture, guys. You guys aren't even looking. Look at the picture. You afraid? I know it's tough. I'm not saying you pulled the trigger, but you're partially responsible. Her last words were, help me. Help me. Why aren't you guys helping her? You guys don't have anything to say? I find that absolutely unbelievable. You guys are public officials. You guys are accountable to the people here, and you guys are supposed to protect public safety.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Your time is up, sir. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name Vladimir. I am coming here for a year. I am 85 years old. It's illegal in all world, in United States to evict a person who is 85 years old on the street from his home. Why don't you for a year not make a committee, not investigate? Why don't you talk to me? Somebody, okay, even you, Mr. Mark, or you, Jewish supervisor, okay? How could you evict? What if somebody comes and evict your parents or your grandparents on the street, 85 years old? It's a death sentence. And nobody from you wanted to talk, wanted to investigate. Why? Why? It's, again I say, it's illegal all over the world to evict somebody on the street who is 85 years old. Why? Because it's a death sentence. Think, maybe sometimes you will be 85 and somebody will do this for you. God charge you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and other victims of the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, less than 14 meters and 10 blocks from sea level. I rise to offer some historical perspective for both Gay Pride Month and Independence Day. That perspective arises from my encounters with an historical personage I will refer to as JCS. He was a frame breaker in the expansion of political rights for the citizens of our beloved state of California. His successful lawsuits changed our elections by allowing anyone to become a candidate for office simply by submitting petitions with voters' signatures. It was no longer necessary to pay large sums of money for the privilege of running for office. This man is a hero of democracy, a gay hero of democracy. Even today, his efforts could benefit any of us. However, I did find it difficult to deal with the man. His behavioral issues, compounded with his drug issues, made him a real challenge for any door staff to deal with, and that was my role at the time. He found it hard to even get into City Hall. His bare feet were always dirty. His little dog was always as smelly as his heavy, colorful brocaded robes, and his name alone would have had him out the door, assuming he could get his full-size United Nations flag through it in the first place. His name was, by court order on his ID and our ballot for mayor, Jesus Christ Satan. He cut back a little later on the speed and changed it again to Prince Arcadia. Of course, these days, you don't even have to submit petitions. All you have to do is lobby the appropriate incumbents, and they appoint you. Thank you, President Breed.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. By my turn, I reject hesitation. I reject limitation. I reject restraint. I reject a setback of human life, I flavor life, life force, along with the progress of one's life force, of destiny, of prosperity, of true game, of good way of life, From that on, every morning I go to Chinatown, Embarcadero, Montgomery, everyone talking about talk to people. I like to talk to people because by talking to people, I can perform my contact, Without contact, there's no connection to our people, We have used talking, contact, connection. Every morning, for example, I walk in Chinatown, I say, the young girl passing by, hey, good girl. Every morning, people say to Mom, good morning, Mama. I love you so much, Mama. I really love you deeply, Mama. I cook some oatmeal to eat for breakfast, Mama. A Chinese word, Mama 早晨，媽媽我愛你，媽我會接衫，我自己沖涼，我煮啲早餐粥俾你食咁。It's the way of being alive, without the format, to be we only one fixed set of way of life, because a man must learn how to be a man. For example, switch to a woman, a girl must learn how to be a girl, and a girl must learn how to be a woman, and a woman must learn how to be a wife, and a wife must learn how to be a mother, and a mother must learn how to be a grandmother, and a grandmother must learn how to be a grandmother, and a grandmother must learn how to be my holy granddaughter.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. The hardest thing to do is accept the truth, especially when you've been living a lie your whole life. The majority of our African American people that know nothing of our own culture, heritage, and history in the midst of perfection. Our universe is perfect, and that all things are a result of universal order. So we are right where we should be in this moment of our history here in America. We cannot wait another moment for what is truth and correct for African American people. If we don't know where we came from, how are we to know where we are going? And is why the Lacey T. Edwards Commission on Education is necessary and very critical at this stage of our development and growth. Nature dictates that everything that affects me will adversely affect you. Trust me, it's far cheaper to teach African history or continue to assume this or that. And one day, we will stop killing one another, realizing that nothing from nothing leaves nothing. Unequivocally, I was born with an obligation to the African community, with the full force of the universe at the helm of my spirit, which is my bright shining light. Vision is my gift, and I must share it with the world. It saddens me every time I come here, because my grandson just went from kindergarten to the first grade, and he can't even spell his name. There's so many issues, within our community, and nothing is being done. President Obama wrote me a letter. He weighed in. He's the leader of the known.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. What a life. Smiling at you, smiling with you, glaring at you, yelling at you, angry with you, shouting at you, loving you, petting you, fooling you, and lying to you, staring at you, smirking at you, sorry for you, forgetting you, and remembering you, begging you, talking with you, talking at you, and talking about you, yawning at you, ignoring you, and singing at you. And then it's over. What a life. What's missing here? There has to be something more, and there is. We are the sum total of all of our experiences and more. The miracle of life and our spiritual connection to the grander scheme of things. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Barry Toronto. I haven't been here in a long time. I first want to say, for the record, after reading a lot of what's been online, neither the Sheriff's Department nor this body should be blamed or be the cause of what happened to the unfortunate death of that woman at Pier 14 the other day. It's ridiculous to point fingers in that direction. There are a lot more questions to be asked and answered before you even go there. First, I want to say a lot of my colleagues in the taxi industry are in Sacramento today lobbying against two bills that should never have been before the state legislators in the first place. And I want to say that I have a lot of respect and admiration for some of the comments and some of the written articles by some of the colleagues here and what they've said. Others here have basically turned their back on the taxi cab industry. And I think it's important you start looking at important issues. Why is there still a vacancy on the SFMTA Board of Directors after many months? It's still vacant. There's supposed to be 7 members, only 6. The other issue is the traffic. If you can't notice how bad traffic has gotten, especially during the peak hours, and that peak hours have expanded. In the afternoons, it's atrocious, and it's even extended as far into the evening hours. It's gotten horrible. And that company at 1455 Market, it's a swear word. I'm not going to say the name to me. They claim that it takes cars off the road. If you ask them how many people who actually come from outside the city to do that job of using the different apps, you'll find out more than half do. And I think it's important to look at at the contribution to the traffic they've done rather than the contribution to trying to deal with the transportation problems. Cab drivers want a better app. Cab drivers want to provide better service. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy helping
Thank you very
people
much.
around town.
Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Susan Pfeiffer. I live in Katy Tang's district. I'm currently running a small neighborhood association, the Outer Sunset Parkside Residents Association, better known as OSPRA. I'm also a member of the FDR Democratic Club for People with Disabilities and Seniors, and I want to compliment Supervisor Tang on the legislation that she introduced today. I think it will go a long way towards completing the cycle of making San Francisco a much more livable city for people with disabilities. And I also want to, on behalf of the FDR Club, to thank those of you who voted for the addition to the mayor's budget this year to create a new position for disability hiring coordinator for the city of San Francisco. We are not aware of any other large city doing this, and if we are correct that it's a first, we hope that San Francisco will applaud themselves and make this known, and because this is something that makes me love living in San Francisco, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, I want to give my ample time. I just wanted to have to fix this, and then I have something else to say. So time will start, I guess, once you get this together. First of all, I just want to say tribute to my supervisor, and I understand that she's going to hold a very important meeting on next Monday in our community, and I'm so happy. But let me here to tell you what I'm here to say without saying any names. Without a doubt, yours truly, Ace Washington, on the case. I am the self-complained situation here. I'm giving my own self a title, which I don't need no permission. I am the Fillmore Corridor Ambassador. I have been there 50-something years. I have seen the history from beginning to the end of what's going on right now. I have been there over 25 years, and I'm hoping and praying that this series of meetings that's going to come to the Western Addition that would include, not exclude, but include ACE on the case. Let me go back to here. Right here we have here with the mayor, and you guys are getting all this money, what they call back, what do they call this money?
Mr. Washington, please use the microphone, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give back money, or what is it called? Add back to the Western Addition. Put that back there. The add back money, I hear over $1.6 million is going to be added back to the Western Addition, as well as other communities. So I'm not just pointing out my community, but doggone it, there must be oversight. There must be reviews on who had monies in the past and what's going to happen in the future. No longer status quo. My name is Ace, and I'm on this case, and I'm hoping and praying, without saying any names, that we can work together and bring a new change to what I call the Fillmore. No, the Phil, no more. The history speaks for itself. And these series of meetings that's coming up is going to be historical. Yours truly, Ace Washington, has a lot to add to what's going on right now. And I spoke to my supervisors. She's supposed to be having these events. It's called the Fillmore, where we are now. Ladies and gentlemen, we in a state of emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Next speaker, please.
California, here we come. At morning, at dawning, birdies singing everything. A sun mist kiss said, don't be late. That's why we can hardly wait. Open up that golden gate, California, here we come. On the wings of Gov, up and above the clouds, the only way to fly is on the wings of Gov. Happy UN birthday to you, a UN world. There are city places I remember in the city board chamber where we go to do public comment. And these places have such meaning. All my life we've loved you more. And Downtown, District 6, don't forget downtown, where all the lights are bright. Downtown, the District 6 is waiting for you. Downtown. And I guess after all this, it won't be so sad if rainy days and drought Mondays won't get us down. Sometimes we'd like to drink quit, and there's no water, and we got a drought to fix. Hanging around, what a city town. We could use some rain and rainy day Mondays. Bring it around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti. I'll give him an applause. Thank you. 1960s, the Mets used to have the Dodgers come into town and be swept, and then the Giants would come into town and they would lose one game a series. And they would always finish behind the Dodgers, one game behind in the 1960s, Mays, McCovey, and Marichal. Pro-sanctuary. Pause and a new direction. I'll agree. That new direction includes a new mayor. I'll agree. A couple of weeks ago, the mission people rallied here. They kept saying, "There's no plan. There's no plan. There's no plan." Well, here's a start of one. The new mayor, he or she, outlaws Ellis Act evictions. Number 2, bans no fault, no cause evictions. Number 3, establishes rent control for all market rate apartments. Their rates are frozen. And if you've been here, lived here in a market rate apartment, and there's very few people that have for 10 years, your rate gets frozen and pegged it 5 years ago. We want to protect and keep people living in the neighborhoods, and a healthy neighborhood has long-term residents there. Even the techies that have been here now 3-4 years are starting to have problems because their rents keep going up 10% each year. All rents, cost of living, capped, I said at 5%.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. We'll get it fixed. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide any public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, can you please read the adoption for the reference to committee items without reference to committee items?
Items 26 through 29 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. Single roll call vote may enact these items. A member may object, sever an item, and have it considered separately.
Okay. Would any members like to remove any items on the adoption without committee reference? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, on items 26 through 29, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay. Those resolutions are adopted and approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, will you please read the in memoriams?
Thank you, Madam President.
Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Campos.
Yes, Madam President. In reference to my comments earlier, I was wondering if maybe on behalf of the entire board, if we could do the in memoriam for Catherine Sinley.
Yes, definitely. Can we take that in memoriam without objection on behalf of the full board? Madam Clerk, can you please read the in memoriams?
Thank you, Madam President. Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Yee, for the late Mr. and Coach Perry Lawrence Chu. On behalf of, at the suggestion of Supervisor Campos, on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, for the late Catherine Steinle.
Okay, colleagues, this brings us to the end of our agenda today. Madam Clerk, is there any other business before us?
That concludes our business for today, Madam President.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.